Yeah,
And
let me get it zoomed in here for folks because like that's a 517-inch Pontiac behind that thing.
yeah, I like that picture because it makes it even look bigger than it is.
Yeah.
She said.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. What'd she say?
Hey guys, here's a quick cut from the 3-hour-long Rich Guido podcast. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, go find the full live feed podcast. Find the podcast anywhere. Live feed will be linked in the description below. See you guys.
All right, let's jump into let's jump into the engine because all we know is 517 cubic inches, but it's still Pontiac powered. So tell us the story there. How does that make things harder being Pontiac?
yeah. So you better bring what you need with you because everything on there is aftermarket and hard to come by. Eli Good, I mean, no, those guys saved me with a harmonic balancer at the one track. But
Nice.
so this is an aftermarket block. It's 435 bore and stroke, and that's what makes the 517 cubes. The heads are a wide port head. They flow like 380 CFM, but because they're a wide port, they have offset lifters. So another rare part that you're going to find a 904, and they're 904 lifters with an offset. So you better have a spare set of those because you're not going to call anybody up. It's also got a 55 millimeter cam. So Mark Campbell at Comp Cams, they seem to be the guys who have all the 55 millimeter Pontiac cores. So
nice.
That's the cam that's in there, and then all the valve trains, all Crower, and so Lewis has taken good care of me. And I mean, like I described earlier, I can't really I don't put any parts in the car that I don't have accessibility to get replacements for, and Crower has been fantastic that way too. You know, Lewis will see a post and he'll be like, "Dude, what do you need? Like,
That's
what can
awesome.
I send you?"
Yeah.
So Bill and I run the same rockers, and so we can share bearings and rockers. And I think the first time that I went on a long trip, I had needle bearings in the roller tip, and so they were starting to wear out. So Lewis had sent me some bushed ones, and so I think we stopped at one checkpoint where people were eating burgers. I was borrowing the vise in the back and rebuilding rockers. So
there you go.
What else on the engine? Yeah, so it's I'm not a Holley guy, not because I don't like Holley, but Matt Blasco got me into amp EFI, so I'm running a MS3 Pro Evo in this. So it's got 8 EGTs, so I can see all the cylinders.
Oh, cool.
All my boost controls done with the ECU. I don't have another controller. Everything's done with that ECU. So it was my first one that I learned on. I wired it all. I read all the instructions. I programmed it all, and then I called Matt Blasco up and I said, "I think I'm ready to start this thing." And he says, "Well, download TeamViewer onto your computer." And I'm like, "Dude, I am not putting TeamViewer on my computer." And he's like, "No, TeamViewer." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, I can put that on my computer, but I'm not putting the other one on." And So he checked it out a bit, and I think 5 minutes later I turned it over and it fired up, and then it really set me up. So Matt doesn't live close to me. I mean, he's a phone call away, but you know, I basically have learned from Matt and do all the tuning myself.
That's cool.
So yeah, that's when I got into fuel injection is, and I mean, it's so much. Like I used to tell people, if you're going to build a hot rod, you have to put overdrive in it. Otherwise you won't drive it. Like, especially if you want to go fast and drive it everywhere, you got to put an overdrive in it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I pretty much wore the bolts out on my tri-power because I put an O2 sensor on it, and I was like, I had that thing dialed in, but I also pretty much wore out the carburetors dialing it in, right? But now I can little tweaks.
And one of the biggest benefits to, you know, fuel injection is, I mean, it's 30 degrees outside. You can go out, and the car's been sitting outside while you and the family have been somewhere for 2 hours. You can go out and that thing starts. It's not some crazy deal trying to get it to start. And, oh man, it's, you can hit the button on fuel injection and it goes,
Yeah.
And that's that. I try and explain that to a lot of, so my dad had a 73 Nova and it was carbureted and it was an Edelbrock, and like that was all the car needed. But if it was less than 50 outside, you could chalk it up. That car wasn't going anywhere. And like we'd go to a car show early in the season and he'd go to leave and it wouldn't fire. Well, then it'd kill the battery because he couldn't get it. You know what I mean? So it's like this whole thing. And before he passed, we were going to do a full fuel injection setup, like a sniper setup or something like that on it, because he wanted to drive the car all the time. And that car ran great when it was running, but when it is not, it just wasn't right,
Yeah. Yeah. And it does make them so streetable. I mean, you can get so much better fuel economy driving down. And I think what makes, all these LS motors last forever is you're not washing the cylinders down with fuel all the time, right there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that side of it. Chris Oler says, he quoted you, says, you have to put an OD in it. No truer words have been said.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris is another Canadian who's coming down from Alberta. He's trailer in his car, but he's got his whole family with
That's
him,
cool.
So that's going to be really cool. Beautiful brown 69 Chevelle. 69,
Oh, that's awesome.
Beaumont, actually. Yeah.
There you go.
6-speed.
The one thing I think that is probably one of the biggest benefits to like an overdrive, or like, you've got a 6-speed in that car. We're so used to dailying something that is relatively quiet, unless you've got but like you get in an old car that's got a 3-speed and you're running 3,000 RPMs. I mean, when's the last time your G8 ran 3,000 RPMs at 70 miles or at 60 miles an hour, Yeah. So people aren't used to driving like that anymore. And then so they get in their hot rod that they're going to drive 10 times a year, and it's got just a 3-speed and it's fast and it's loud and it's fun. And then they're like, I'm not driving this thing 2 hours because it sucks.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely an OD.
And when you're doing race week or, one of the events, you can't hear it when it's going bad. And by the time you slow down at a gas station in here, there could be a lot of carnage. But
yeah,
turbo cars are definitely quieter, and this thing with an overdrive and such low RPM, you can hear what's going on. So it helps you go, oh shit, sooner, and hopefully you save it.
Right. So let's talk about the turbo progression, but let's talk about your exhaust system first. So you're through a turbo. Are you straight pipe? You have a muffler on it? You have a dump on it? What do you got?
Yeah. So it's a 5-inch downpipe because it's a 94 millimeter turbo. And then underneath the car, it's flanged under there, and it necks down to 4-inch. Goes from 4-inch to a single turbo muffler, and then the exhaust of the turbo muffler is 3-inch. And so that's what I drive on the street. And then I just pop that whole I can pop it off in like a minute and throw it off while I'm at the track.
Yep. So is it dump in front of the tire then, I guess?
In front of the rear tire, under the car.
Yep. That's cool. So the old truck I run, it's just a 78 millimeter on it. So it's like a 3-inch out. And then we're down and back through a muffler, and I've got a V-band right at the firewall. Same thing. And just pop that deal off, throw the tip on and go on, to get it out from the cab. So
yeah, it works good. Mine's just straight down. Like it's 5-inch, it goes down because I still have inner fender wells. It goes down and it dumps like right under the passenger seat. And I remember the first time I put it on the 2-step was in at Matt Blasco's dyno. And I put it on the 2-step, and I'm like, oh my God, it scared the shit out of me because it sounded like there was a bomb going off under the passenger seat. And Matt's looking at the data log next time, and he's like, you're only like 50% throttle. I'm like, dude, I can't do that in here. Like, but yeah, now when I launch the car, it's foot to the floor, shoots flames out that big underneath the car. And
it's awesome.
It's a good time.
Yeah, that's a 2-step, I think, is probably the next step for my old truck. I'd like to put a brake in it and be able to get up and have some fun. So, because it's just a stock bottom end 4.8 it makes like 500. It's no fun, but it's no fun compared to what you've got. But it was built 100% for burnouts and ice cream. That's all it does is burnout.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Shitty tires. Hiwashi Tire and Lube keeps us in. He'll text me, "Hey man, I got some decent 18s. You need them?" I'm like, "Yep, let's go." And he's got a burnout pad poured at his tire shop, and we just go out and kill tires and put new ones on and go on. So, all right. So walk us through kind of the turbo progression. So you went tri-power NA running low 11s.
Yeah.
And then move us through kind of like why you went turbo, and then obviously up. Did you start with a 94 millimeter? Did you start small? All that stuff.
Yeah. So I went tri-power, and then I went this motor, and really Muscle Motors from Strathmore. They built this motor and basically said, "Here, we want you to debut this at Drag Week." So in 2013, I drove all the way down with a great big Dominator carb, and got second in big block naturally aspirated street race. And like I said, when I came back, he told me what the price tag was and asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I went,
God, no.
So I knew at that point I wanted to go boost. So I built I think at that time it was just a 455, and I threw a supercharger on it, a Pro Charger actually, belt driven.
Yep.
And I think the car was running almost the same as NA. Like I did it for cheaper, but it was still a Pontiac motor, so it wasn't that cheap. Mm-hmm. And it was an F1C. And then at the end of the year, I cranked it up. And at that time, I was pump gas stupid. And I was still running on pump gas, spraying a little bit of meth. And I blew it up, I think, on the street. I obliterated all kinds of stuff inside there, pistons. And then that was right before an event. And so, so then I went aluminum Pontiac, and I still have that one. And I was also still doing pump gas at that time. And I actually broke that motor too. So I had a Pro Charger. Yeah, and that was not a cheap lesson. But I still have all that stuff. I pretty much have the heads, the block, crank. But the block needs some welding now. So one day I'm going to get back at that. And then and when I blew that up, it was right before an event. I knew Todd had the 517 still sitting on the floor. I said, "Dude, we got to make a deal." He's got a 71 GTO. I said, "I'll paint the car if I can have the motor." So I took that motor, put the Pro Charger on it. And I don't know how much experience you have with Pro Charger, belt-driven Pro Chargers, but you can't stick your head under the hood without earmuffs on. Like they are noisy, and they sound like they're falling apart. Yeah. So I would actually, for the long drives, I'd just take the belt off and drive without the belt on and throw it on at the track.
How did that affect drivability? I guess it probably, at that point, it thinks it's NA, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really doesn't. In fact, I built a separate pipe so I could throw a filter right on the throttle body. And eventually I just got lazy and started sucking through the turbo all the time, or through the Pro Charger. And with the overdrive and the low RPM, there was never any issue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because, on a setup like that, you're probably not really building any boost till you're higher in the RPMs anyways.
No, in fact, that's the other thing that was bad about the Pro Charger is it's 5.4 to 1 ratio. So even if you're cruising at 2,000 RPM, that thing's going 10,000 RPM, and it blows off a ton of air, and it's just really noisy. Yep. And so then, the nice thing about Pro Chargers is you keep your exhaust, all that stuff. And so finally I decided, no, I'm gonna put a turbo on, and I called up, had some recommendations from some drag week guys, which is another benefit of having all your buddies. I called up Reed at Works Turbochargers. I told him what I did, and I'm like, dude, I drive this thing everywhere. And so I usually tell people that about 5 times, because usually they're like, he didn't drive it everywhere. Yeah. And so I told Reed how much. So it's a journal bearing, Borg Warner. It's an SX5, or it's a S500 SXE, I think. Yeah, it's a big boy.
Yeah,
And
let me get it zoomed in here for folks, because like that's a 517-inch Pontiac behind that thing.
yeah, I like that picture because it makes it even look bigger than it is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. What'd she say?
Yeah, and so yeah, I built the whole turbo kit. I took my my headers, flipped them around the other way, and then took a saw to them, and then I started building the headers out of my old my turbo headers out of my old headers, and then
Nice.
I fabricated all that stuff, and yeah, that turbo does everything I want it to. Like it's still, I know it'll make 20 plus pounds, and my 2 8-second passes I've made have been at 12 pounds of boost. So
what? Oh my God, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, but for the longest time, like up till last year, the freaking car was a handful. Like
Yeah.
you'd hit you'd be at about the 900 foot mark, and you'd be like, okay, are we going this time? Or are we going to make a ride? And once I realized that the wheels were like this, and it was like grabbing and throwing me. But yeah, so now I've sorted out a few things. So I'm hoping Florida will see steady 8s all week, but we'll find out.
Well, yeah, and you and I kind of discussed that a little bit in messages or on the phone before this. Have you ever, I guess, Oklahoma stuff probably isn't crazy high elevation, but we're going to be sea level at a bunch of that stuff. So
yeah,
that car ought to go crazy.
You know what? For me, I've got so much left in the turbo that usually the air isn't the issue. It's usually just, it's all about 60 foot in there. And the Starks will tell you, I mean, it's 4,000 pounds with me in it.
That's crazy. Streetcar stuff, bud.
Yeah. And that's with the passenger seat out and no back seat. And it's still heavy as shit. But I figured out a couple of things. So I'm pretty sure I can get my 60 foot back at Florida, run some, 460 foots and be down. I would love to be down below 870 so I could go faster than Bill, but we'll see.
All right, if you enjoyed that, make sure you watch the full thing. It is crazy. The stories that dude has are awesome. We're going to have him back on as part of the 12 Pods of Christmas that is coming up next week. All right, guys, see ya.